Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Precious and this is Precious Reads. Today I'll be recommending to you some of my favorite romances that I've read recently. Office romance has to be one of my favorite tropes in the romance genre. There's close proximity, there's a power dynamic, there is usually within the power dynamic, there is a boss, a subordinate, and the subordinate usually knocks the boss down just a few pegs for their either attitude or demanding behaviors. And this happens to be just one of my favorite tropes. The first book that I'd like to recommend to you is 2 Weeks Notice by Whitney G. This has to be like in its entirety what I want from an office romance. You have a snarky boss, you have a hardworking heroine who, you know, she doesn't have time for him, and it's not like instantaneous attraction. It's over a long period of time. So 2 Weeks Notice follows Preston and Tara. Tara is a hard-up graduate looking for a job to help obviously pay rent, sustain herself within this big city, so she doesn't go home a failure basically. And she's been doing things to get by in this big city, like dropping in at a high-profile restaurant, in a high-end hotel where they have free breakfast buffets for the guests, which she is not, and helping herself to that. The owner of the restaurant finds out that she's been helping herself to his goods, and he goes and he confronts her, but her knowledge, her skill, her way of talking herself out of this sort of intrigues him, and he hires her, he offers her a job and hires her. He has to be, I've said this before, he has to be like the Miranda Priestly of romance. He's the male Miranda Priestly. He is so demanding. He expects the best from his employees. He expects more than the best from his assistant, which Tara happens to be. And he really pushes her to her brinks. She's tired of it. She's been there for a couple of years and she tries to hand in her notice, where he informs her that she did not read the fine print, which happened to be in invisible ink. I know, never, like, what the hell? And then she goes on a project of trying to annoy the hell out of him and being the worst employee in existence, and to try and get herself fired, but to no avail. This was fun. This was comedic. I loved the dynamic between Preston and Tara, and I love that he enjoyed just pushing her. He really enjoyed pushing her, and the more he pushed her, the more she pushed back, which is part of the attraction. 2 Weeks Notice by Whitney G, one of my favorites. Please pick it up. Another Whitney G that I picked up is The Office Party. This follows Savannah and Preston. These two are on equal footing mainly. Preston owns, is it an advertising company? I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's an advertising company, and Savannah happens to be his right-hand woman, not really assistant, but somebody who helps him run the company. And these two really, they support each other, they work well together. Garrett is sort of the most hated boss. They have these chats and group chats about the boss. You know how it is if you work in an office. And Savannah's part of the anti-Garrett militia or the anti-Garrett group or team. And the most annoying thing that Garrett does in this business is that every Christmas they have to go to this office party, and it's like mandatory for everything. Savannah's tried to skip, Savannah's tried to run away, Savannah's tried to, you know, worm her way out of these office parties, but to no avail. The final office party that we're invited to as a reader happens to be at Savannah's grandma's lodge, so she can't really escape this. She has to go to the lodge and spend time with them. Sparks fly, their romance blossoms, and this was so funny. We saw, you know how it is in an office, whenever you get promoted or in a leadership position, you're gonna have haters, and Savannah finds out that she has some too. I thought it was funny, it was fun, it was hilarious. Savannah trying to escape Garrett's office parties, just priceless. Please pick it up if you're into a lighthearted comedy, rom-com-esque office romance. This was it. The next one I'd like to suggest to you is Vicious by LJ Shin. Okay, so there's a lot of genres in here, but The Office, it is also an office romance as well, and I thought I'd just drop it in here because I think Vicious was one of my, like, the first Kindle Unlimited books that I read, because I didn't know about Kindle Unlimited and how awesome it was, and how the amazing authors and amazing books that you could find. So that's why I have an LJ Shin book on this, because it was like my first foray into indie romances. So Vicious by LJ Shin is, if you don't know what it's about, it is an enemies to lovers childhood high school romance, but it happens over a couple of years. And the office romance part of this book happens when Amelia is really struggling to keep her head above water. She needs medication for her sister, she needs to pay rent, and she meets Vicious. Vicious, just being the ultimate bad boy and spoiled kid and just nuisance, hires her to be his assistant. Just the office section or part of this book was funny to me because Vicious hated the way she dressed and how perky and spark and like chipper she was. So I loved that as an office romance. The entire book in itself is an enemies to lovers, and it's over a multitude of years, and it has time jumps and time skips. So Vicious by LJ Shin, I made it fit into my office romance recommendations because I loved when they worked together. The next and my final book that I'd like to recommend to you is a Talia Hibbert book. Talia Hibbert, again, one of my favorite authors, and I've been trying to get through her body of work, and this is Bad for the Boss. Bad for the Boss follows this antisocial, multi-millionaire advertising boss named Theo, and we also meet Jennifer, who finally, she's a social media manager, but finally got a real full-time, well-paying position in an advertising company, which has been a dream for her. She has had a really difficult time sort of in her childhood and just finding her place and finding good work that will give her a salary regularly because she was a freelancer. So this job means a lot to her. She is being hit on by somebody in the office. He's being annoying, and she sends an email like, look at this guy annoying me, to her boss, who also happens to be one of her best friends. But the email goes to Theo, one of the owners of the advertising company. They start to communicate back and forth. Their communications are really funny. There's a little bit of banter, there's a little bit of cheekiness. And then she decides, she goes to his office one day, they have an encounter. Theo really falls for her. I think he's one of those heroes. He instantaneously falls in love with her, but she doesn't go all in because he's her boss. She wants to keep it on the down low. This job is important. She doesn't want to mess it up. She feels like if they break up or they separate in any way, it's going to affect her job. So she doesn't just jump into the relationship, which some people might find a little bit annoying because I don't want to say she treats him badly. She doesn't give her all to him, and you kind of feel for Theo, but he's always there for her. He's always there to protect her. She has a bit of an issue with somebody stalking her as well, and he tries to help her, but she wants to handle everything herself. So this one was pretty enjoyable. It was deep. She had her issues, and Theo, coming from a fairly more stable background than her, had to accommodate and learn how to deal and handle her, and I think he did an excellent job. This was a really good office romance, and it went outside of the office as well, which I loved. And again, Talia Hibbert just serving excellence with a little bit of deep something in there. One of my favorites. And this happens to be an interracial romance. I think Theo is Asian. think he's Korean, I'm not sure. I think he's Korean, and Jennifer is a voluptuous, curvy black girl. So that was also something I was like, oh, okay, that's nice. Totally different to the norm. And I enjoyed it immensely. If you have any other recommendations for me or any other romance, office romance that you think that I would enjoy, please put the suggestions down below, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.